This we pray in the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. Thank you very much.
Thank you too, Pastor Tyrone Hunkins. Please be seated.
I rise and seek to have an amendment to the order paper, in fact, two amendments to the order paper. At item O, the introduction of bills and first reading, we will insert for a first reading the bill, short title, which is Counter-Financing Proliferation of Weapons of Mass Destruction Bill 2020. That, of course, Mr. Speaker, will be moved by the Honorable Prime Minister. And under item O, you can put it right at the top. First reading, so it could be the number one bill for first reading. And then, of course, Mr. Speaker, the bill, Counter-Financing Proliferation of Weapons of Mass Destruction Bill 2020. Madam Clerk, she has got a copy. Did we get a copy of the bill?
The bill that yesterday? Yes, you should have been given one.
It should have been outside though, yes. Copy, yeah.
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, and on page 2, if you will, under item P, you will note the paragraph, the section which begins with the Honorable Attorney General. Honorable Attorney General and Minister responsible for Justice and Legal Affairs, Elections and Communication will seek leave to introduce and have read a first time. We will strike the words seek leave to introduce and have read a first time and replace it with the words moved the second reading of. You follow that, Mr. Speaker?
Yes.
So it's the second reading.
So place first and second?
Yes.
What is it?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. May it please you.
Thank you. The question is that the order paper be amended as described by the Honorable Leader of Government Business, Mr. Eugene Hamilton. Those in favor of the order paper as amended? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Confirmation of minutes.
Now, we would have circulated just yesterday a number of outstanding minutes. I think they're numbering some 5 sets of minutes, and we will deal with those minutes now. We'll begin with the minutes of July 30, 2019. Yes.
July 30th. I would move that we accept as presented.
The question is that the minutes of July 30, 2019 be confirmed. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. The minutes of July 30, 2019 are hereby confirmed. The minutes of September 3rd, 2019 I'll put the question. Yes, thank you.
Minutes of September 3rd. We ask for the minutes to be accepted as presented.
The question is that the minutes of September 3rd, 2019 be confirmed. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. The minutes are so confirmed. Minutes of September 17, 2019.
Again, I rise, and the number of minutes here suggests that this Parliament meets very often. And I would ask that the minutes of September 17th be accepted as presented if there are no amendments.
The question is that the minutes of Tuesday, September 17, 2019 be hereby confirmed. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. We proceed to the minutes of November 26, 2019.
Again, Mr. Speaker, I rise if there are no amendments. We accept the minutes as presented.
Yes, the question is that the minutes of Thursday, November 28, 2019 be accepted. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. The minutes are hereby accepted or confirmed. And the final set of minutes will be the minutes related to the budget debate 2020 held this Thursday, December 12, 2019.
Mr. Speaker, likewise. There seem to be no amendments proposed by any of the members on both sides, so I ask that the minutes be accepted as presented.
Thank you. The question is that the minutes of Thursday, December 12, 2019 be confirmed. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it. And so that would have taken care of the confirmation of minutes, and the fact that there were no amendments suggests to me that the staff of the Parliamentary Office and myself, I would add, we did an excellent job in preparing these minutes. There was not even one typo found, so I am proud of this moment. Thank you. Thank you. Next item.
Messages from the Governor General.
There are no messages.
Announcements by the Speaker.
Just a few announcements. It would be remiss of me not to apologize for our late start this morning, and I do hereby apologize for our late start. I have had apologies for the absence from today's sitting from the Honourable Marcella Liebert and the Honourable Patrice Nisbet, who I'm advised are both under the weather today. We wish them speedy recovery. I've also had an apology from, yes, and I've just received a verbal apology from the clerk from the Honourable Senator Nigel Carty, who also will be absent today. I've also had an apology from the Honourable Lindsay Grant, member for St. Christopher 4, who advised that he will be late today. I take this opportunity to recognize in our gallery Ambassador Dr. Linda Suber Ali from the State of Palestine, non-resident ambassador to the Caribbean, and of course to St. Kitts Nevis. Welcome, Dr. Linda, Ambassador Linda. It's a pleasure to have you here and for you to spend some time with us. We appreciate you. Thank you. It is also my pleasure to make a special announcement, and that is with respect to the officer who is sitting next to the clerk, Miss Bodie Thompson. That is Miss Trevelyn Stapleton. If you can rise. I would have mentioned late last year that Miss Stapleton was our deputy clerk designate, and since that time I have been formally advised of her actual appointment, signed off by His Excellency the Governor General Sir Tapley, making her appointment to the position of Deputy Clerk effective January 1st, 2020. So congratulations in order, and I wish you all the best, Miss Stapleton. Miss Stapleton comes to this position. You may be seated. In my opinion, well qualified. She holds a substantive post of Assistant Secretary within government, and based on her academic qualifications, I do not hesitate to say I find her to be well qualified to also take up this position as Deputy Clerk. And based on what she has done to date, in the short space of time, I am quite impressed. And again, I wish you all the best, Miss Trevelyn Stapleton. Those are my announcements.
Presentation of papers and reports from committees. Petitions. Government notices. Unofficial notices. Questions. Request for leave to move the adjournment of the National Assembly on matters of urgent public importance. Statements by ministers.
I recognize the Honourable Prime Minister, Dr. Timothy Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise with your leave to make two brief statements. Mr. Speaker, it is public knowledge that the Team Unity administration is celebrating its 5th anniversary And in fact, those celebrations started in grand style on Monday with our visits to the industrial and manufacturing sector, and continues over the next couple or several weeks, because we have an extended period of celebration, and rightly so. Perhaps it is good to start by giving God thanks, because the Team Unity movement, when we got officially started at that grand launch on the 26th of September 2013, was a movement, we were told, which would never happen. Many persons doubted whether the citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis, who had, as it were, identified themselves with political parties, could ever come together as a single unit to serve the national interests. On the 26th of September 2013, the leadership and membership of the People's Labour Party, the People's Action Movement, and the Concerned Citizens Movement answered in the affirmative, yes, we can. The rest is history, because indeed we have come this far since the historic launch in 2013. Indeed, when we were in the thrust of the campaign, the elements of the vision sought to create this unity with respect to the Team Unity movement. Thankfully, the people of St. Kitts and Nevis had of their own volition came to the conclusion that the country needed unity to end the cycle of divisiveness, to end the cycle of victimization, to bring a brand new relationship between the federal entity and the Nevis Island administration, and by extension, the people of Nevis. The country had to come together in unity. And polls after polls reflected it was the view of 70% of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. Yes. On February 16th, after several efforts to undermine the democracy within the country by a government that had long lost the trust of the people, and indeed had no legitimacy, having lost the support of the majority of elected members in the parliament, the country had an opportunity to choose. And they chose Team Unity over every other. Today, as leader of the movement and as Prime Minister, I want to say thanks to all right-thinking people of St. Kitts and Nevis, to say that we on this side of the government and all our well-wishers appreciate that you had a choice and you chose us to serve the people. When we had the benefit of the support of the people, and that was being crystallized on the night of the 16th February 2015, again, the forces of division, the forces of obstruction attempted to silence the will of the people. And the announcement of the outcome suddenly was put on pause. I was, and the Honorable Attorney General, sworn in on the 18th of February 2015. The rest of the cabinet, they were sworn in on the 22nd of February 2015. the election losers, Mr. Speaker, declare that we would not last for 6 weeks. And then when we reach that milestone, they say we wouldn't last for 6 months. And they continue their tomfoolery for a long period of time. And now that we have gone for full term, they are now begging for the next general elections. Tomfoolery. Mr. Speaker, it is important for us to reflect on the circumstances 5 years ago, the tension in the country, the fact that today we are meeting in a parliament and there is peace pervading the land. It stands in stark contrast to the reality in 2015. Every parliament since 2013, Church Street had to be barricaded. The army men had to be in the streets. The police had to be in the streets. Certain persons were chosen from customs and excise, sent into the parliament, hidden as civilians with arms ready for action. That is the climate then. And you contrast it now to the situation where St. Kitts and Nevis is the safest place to be, to live, to do business. 5 years after, we can say that we have come full circle in the exercise of our democracy. That is a success that the people demanded when they voted on February 15th to bring the Team Unity administration into being. I am humbled, and we all are, by the opportunity to serve the people. 5 years since 2015, we ask, where are we now? The answer on the 2 platforms which we brought to the people, democracy, good governance, and the prosperity agenda, we have advanced on every front, and we are stronger than we were in 2015. We have experienced since 2015 5 consecutive years of positive growth. The last 5 years before us, 2010 to 2014, we experienced negative growth in 2010, in 2011, in 2012. Negative growth in accumulation of over 6%, Mr. Speaker. And over that 5-year period, the average growth was just around 1%, Mr. Speaker. That is the reality. 5 years, Mr. Speaker, of consecutive growth. Today, we stand with the highest per capita income of all the member states within the ECCU currency union. Today, we stand as a country with one of the largest reserves in history. Today, we stand among our peers with the lowest debt to GDP ratio of all independent states within the currency union. Stark contrast to what was before Team Unity, when the world looked at us, scared and afraid of us, wondering how any government could have taken their debt to GDP ratio to nigh 200%. That is what it was. Fiscal recklessness and mismanagement. Yes. We had to accord with. Mr. Speaker, importantly, the international assessment of our country, which has come through the World Justice Project, it ranks us number one of all countries in the sub-region on the matter of good governance. and 8 indicators. 8 indicators, and St. Kitts and Nevis has been ranked for 2 consecutive years as number 1 in the OECS, and the rule of law, number 2 in the rest of the sub-region. So it is true to say that St. Kitts and Nevis, 5 years doing business with Team Unity, stands proudly as the quintessential example of the best small island, best managed small island state in our region. That is what we have done in the short of 5 years. Our economy today is stronger than we met it. A record number of persons have real jobs. Over 3,000 persons have received various forms of housing support, be it through the National Housing Corporation, be it through our home repair program, be it through the health program instituted by the National Housing Corporation, or be it the nigh 600 beneficiaries of the first-time home mortgage program, be it the nigh 200 beneficiaries under the government employee program. Yes, Mr. Speaker, we have done quite a lot. In the last 5 years, we had to grapple with the mess left behind by an administration that had been placed for 20 years, that brought fiscal morass, that brought us international shame and embarrassment with our most significant and important international partners. I want to commend our Minister of Foreign Affairs for leading the efforts to reposition and recalibrate our relationships with the government of Canada and the USA. Mr. Speaker, our country is moving on more securely and better than it was then. And it came from hard work. It came from doing the right things, not because they were convenient to do. We did them simply because it was the right thing to do. That is why we paid off the IMF the $117 million left behind by the former administration. That is why we went to the government of Venezuela and we agreed to pay the debt that was left behind by the former administration, because we had to act responsibly with the rest of the international community. Mr. Speaker, in terms of our manifesto commitments, we have done wonderfully. I should have walked with the manifesto. You have it? See, we are a team. One forgot, the other remembers, Mr. Speaker. This was the manifesto for 2015 to 2020, Prosperity for All, and it's well worked. So we flip the cover. The key Team Unity policies at a glance. $500 funded family support for households earning $3,000 or less per month. Promise made, promise delivered by the administration. We say that we will guarantee that programs like PEP will continue and be upgraded to step up so young people can have real opportunities for self-employment, for appropriate training, for permanent jobs, and earn a decent wage that they can live on. We have done that. We have moved from PEP to STEP, and we are working to ensure that all the workers on the STEP program, through appropriate training, will become and find permanent jobs. We promised and we delivered no VAT on food and medicine and educational supplies and funeral expenses. In debt when families are traumatized, especially the poor. We found it unconscionable that the government that introduced the most extortionate introductory VAT rate would choose to tax our people not only in life, but to tax them in debt. And we brought an end to that viciousness by the former administration. We said we would create over 2,000 new jobs within our first term. We have delivered, according to Social Security, perhaps nearly 2 times that in terms of the registration of new persons into the scheme. Promises made, promises delivered. We say that we will make prompt payment of overdue 16 million gratuity still owed to the farmer sugar workers who were told in 2005 that the sugar industry will close over the dead body of the leader then. The sugar industry did close, and he's still alive. Thanks be to God. But importantly, when he closed the sugar industry, only 968 persons received any form of severance benefit from an industry which in its heyday boasted over 6,000 workers. 968 earned a penny. And many of the farmer sugar workers and their family were aggrieved. That is why we said we will bring some system of restoration. Thankfully, the government of Venezuela came to our support and provided us with the $16 million that were required. We, of our own, invested in the setting up of the office and other support to the entity which we had established. We then paid out $17.5 million to 2,432 successful applicants comprising farmer sugar workers or their beneficiaries. And they came from Nevis, they came from St. Kitts, they came from Guyana, they came from the Dominican Republic. Whoever they were, in a transparent manner, we opened up the process. We set up an entire office over at next to the courthouse. What do we call that street? South Stewart Street. And gave people time to come to fill in the forms and to have them being processed by an appropriate committee. So compare 968 beneficiaries under the party supposedly that love poor people and love sugar workers to 2,432 persons under a team unity government. Yes, we spoke and discovered highlighting the key issues that we will deal with, that we will provide over 3,000 house lots for our people who are in need of decent housing, and that we will construct and support over 2,000 new homes. Well, we said we have produced over 3,000 housing solutions already. We have given well over 3,000 house lots, including in the last 2 years when we redeemed 400 acres of land from the land for debt swap, making them available to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis at affordable rates. Yes. Under the land for debt swap, the price at which those lands would have had to be sold, just at cost, was just over $11 per square foot. And that is why we oppose it, because we said that no ordinary person in Lodge Atlas, no ordinary person in Sandy Point and Fig Tree, no ordinary person in Kayard, no ordinary person over in number 4, indeed no ordinary person anywhere in St. Kitts and Nevis would be able to pay $11 per square foot of land. So we have redeemed the lands and brought them back to the people. We spoke about the reduction in mortgage payments for NHC houses because the arrears were substantial and too many people, while they were happy for their homes, could not pay. The interest rate then ranged around 9%. This team Unity administration brought it down into a tiered response. 2% if you are at the lowest level, 3% if you are a medium wage owner, and I think it was 5% at the upper end. So we have delivered. We spoke finally education fund to underwrite university costs for persons lacking collateral. More assistance has been granted to those wanting to study than at any other time in the history of the country under this administration. Hundreds of students now are all over the world being supported by the Team Unity administration. The Ministry of Education introduced a program to enhance the human capital of our teachers and to pay for a master's program. How many beneficiaries do we have, Honorable Minister? 54. 54 teachers are being assisted with the master's program, the largest investment in postgraduate education to be undertaken by any administration in the history of St. Christopher and Nevis. That is the record, Mr. Speaker, that we are talking about. The record includes the improved and enhanced relationship between the people of Nevis and the people of St. Kitts. Yes, Mr. Speaker, there is a long way to go, but where we are the best ever in terms of the relationship, the quality of the relationship between St. Christopher and the island of Nevis, Mr. Speaker. We introduced in our first term the notion of giving budgetary support to the Nevis Island Assembly, and that has continued every year. For the first time under Team Unity administration, Nevis was able to access resources to assist in its development through the SIDF and through the federal government. The Honorable Premier spoke eloquently about that at the recent opening of the Treasury building. Those who have visited the Mundo Track in Nevis would see also another example of what the new relationship has brought. So we have come from afar. When several years ago, under the former administration, the check for the workers of the NIA was bounced in order to bring shame and confusion on the island of Nevis. So we have come very far, Mr. Speaker. I want to say, Mr. Speaker, that we are proud of our accomplishments over the last 5 years. There are too many to be enumerated in one sitting of the Honorable House. We will have to come back every month for me to do another chapter and another chapter, Mr. Speaker. But I believe the delivery of the promises are being well felt by our people. In just 5 years. The $500 that we have made available, as it were, to top up the earning capacity of the poor families is being well appreciated. It has made a difference in their dignity. It has meant for the first time they can say, I will pay my bill monthly out of this, my water bill, my electricity bill, so I don't have to live in darkness with my children. It has meant for the grandmother that she doesn't have to wait for a handout from a daughter or a son. At least she has $500 available to do some things for herself. And the people, Mr. Speaker, are deeply appreciative. Those who were there for 20 years too long can say anything now, because their promise will be like a comfort to our food. If for 20 years, 20 long years of our lives, for some of us, it was all of our voting life we have given to one party, and they didn't do the things that we needed them to do. And they want to come, in the last shower of rain, as we would say, to ask another chance. Well, this is not a raffle. This is not a raffle. This is not a bingo, and in any event, we control the O. So they will not get through that way, Mr. Speaker. The government of the country requires people with a certain discipline and capacity and patriotism who are willing to make sacrifice to advance the country from point A to a higher and better position than we have met it. And that is what we have done over the last 5 years. And I am grateful for the support of the country and the understanding, Mr. Speaker. Today, as we stand, the people in our country feel safer. The people in our country have opportunities and finances. Their finances are in a better shape. Mr. Speaker, we didn't achieve the position of the best managed small island state by accident. It wasn't by luck. It wasn't by chance. We got here because the cabinet of the country and the individuals making up the party determined that we will put the people before politics and before party. We work together for the benefit of both islands, and we are doing excellently as a team. No wonder, Mr. Speaker, people are saying confidently, in the truth of it, that 5 years of team unity better than 20 years of the former administration. 5 years of team unity. We have done more than any other administration in its first term. The peace must never be taken for granted, because peace really is the will of God. And wherever you see people are attempting to create discord and confusion, you know their ways are not good ways. And so I want to ask the country to continue to pray, our people to continue to work hard, our people to show discipline, our people to appreciate the virtues of industry and sacrifice, and always in their heart to carry a love for St. Kitts and Nevis. I know, Mr. Speaker, that the country will continue to move forever forward, and we will never go back to what we rejected on the 16th of February 2015. So, Mr. Speaker, I just wanted, as we commemorate, to put into perspective some of what we have delivered and underscore. It is important too, Mr. Speaker, and I move to a second statement, for me to record and reaffirm the adherence and allegiance of the Team Unity administration to democracy. Because, you see, Mr. Speaker, as we celebrate our outstanding achievements on behalf of the people, it is important for us to remind ourselves and our well-wishers that as a government and people, we will always be glued to the essential tenets of parliamentary democracy, and we will respect our Constitution. So there is no need for anxiety out there about when elections will come. Elections will come in due season, and it certainly will come within the time frame provided by the Constitution. That is a commitment we made. So if there are people out there wanting to ring bell, ring any imaginary bell. But that is not the call for the elections. And we can give them one, paint it blue, yellow, and orange. We could even paint it red, because that bell is an imaginary bell. It has no meaning, no significance in the context of the election. The Constitution is what guides us. And so I want to say that my government will be committed to that. And the examples of this, very real. In the last year, full year, of the bygone administration, they convened the parliament 4 times. 4 times. Every year since 2015, this parliament has met more times consistently. At least twice as many times the parliament has been convened each year under the theme Unity Administration. One of the dark points in our history, Mr. Speaker, was the refusal of the bygone administration to call the motion of no confidence. Call the motion of no confidence, allow the parliament to debate it, and the people to determine. Hijack the country, forcing us, Mr. Speaker, to go to the court, and for Her Honor, the judge, Pauletta Lance, to rule that the decision of the former regime to withhold the motion of no confidence was unconstitutional. Mark you, this is the same set of people asking when we will have an election as if there's a problem in the country.
Oh my goodness.
But for 26 months, when faced with a motion of no confidence, which challenged their legitimacy to govern, which challenged even the legality of what they were doing, they held it in abeyance, went on 26 months too long. This is what it was. The election should have been called in 2013. The election should have been called when in December he said he did not have the support of the members of his own cabinet to be able to bring the budget within time.
There was no confidence.
Because the failure in the Westminster system of democracy to pass a budget is equivalent to a vote of no confidence.
Yes, that's what it is.
But they held it in abeyance for 2.5 years, Mr. Speaker. And we made the commitment that that kind of disgraceful precedent by the bygone administration would never repeat itself. And accordingly, we passed the Motion of No Confidence Act, number 10 of 2019, on the 28th of November, 2019, to make it pellucidly obvious that priority must be given to a motion of no confidence. Irony of ironies. The same set of people who refused for 26 months to convene the parliament to deal with the motion of no confidence had the brass face to bring a motion of no confidence in the government and ask that it be treated as a matter of emergency. And they felt we weren't going to respond. But we're smarter than them.
Yeah.
And so we said, since you want a debate, let us have the debate. Within probably, 2 weeks? 7 days, we convened the parliament. Interrupted the Christmas of persons because they said it was urgent.
Yes.
The law says you must give it priority.
Yes.
And we therefore said, let us come and hear what was so urgent. The motion wasn't even written properly.
No.
It did not identify some of the persons to whom it referenced properly.
No.
It did not have correct dates.
No.
But in any event, we allowed the debate. And it was same old posturing from the same old leadership, same old abuse, same old discordant noise in the parliament, which the people rejected. we want to make it clear that on the Team Unity, we will never go back to that traumatic period of 2012 to 2015, when the arrogance and insecurity of the outdated regime caused it to force itself on the people, even when it was very clear that that regime had lost its legitimacy and constitutional anchor. We will move forward in our next term to further enhance parliamentary practice and the Constitution as the fulcrum of a functioning democracy. We will, in our second term, continue our work to bring constitutional reform to our 36-year-old 1983 Constitution. Our enlightened view causes us to debate in our Parliament a seminal constitutional reform by way of the Constitution of St. Christopher and Nevis, tenure of the Office of the Prime Minister, Amendment Bill 2019. The opposition voted to deny a most significant and the first ever attempt in history, the first ever attempt in history to reform the Constitution, which was being done by Team Unity. They voted to deny this significant development because they want to preserve, they say, a leader for life. Well, St. Kitts is not Zimbabwe. St. Kitts is not. St. Kitts is not one of those states where you are a leader for life. St. Kitts must always be an enlightened democracy, and St. Kitts must lead in that regard. So, Mr. Speaker, we will have an opportunity in our second term when we are returned here with an increased majority of members on this side to effect the necessary constitutional reforms for which the opposition has now been obstructionist in their approach. And perhaps it's shame, but we could well get rid of shame by doing the right thing. 20 years, they say it was a bad constitution. 20 years, they faulted the Bryan Clause, so to speak. And 20 years, no effort, even when they was all eight, even when they were all eight, even when they had all the power, Mr. Speaker, to effect the changes, they never did. And several commissions by Sir Fred Phillip, they never did. So, Mr. Speaker, we want to enlarge the freedom. We want to provide opportunities for new people to assume leadership, for the breath of fresh air to always be there in the corridors of power. And that is why we move the motion to bring a finite life to the tenure of the Prime Minister in office. And we will bring it again in our second term, because it is good. A majority of countries are doing that. In the USA, 8 years as president, and then someone new. People point to that as the model of democracy. We are saying 10 years, so we give you 2 more years. And if you can't serve for that period and deliver and create your own legacy, then you shouldn't worry the people to come back again. Come back again, old time something, will come back again 20 years after. Can't be good for democracy. Mr. Speaker, I want to go quickly to the matter of the elections and to make the point that this administration has been given a constitutional mandate to govern St. Kitts and Nevis until around the middle of August 2020. Listen, the Constitution which we are working toward allows the government in its first term to proceed until the middle of August 2020. Indeed, we are happy because Team Unity has been the most successful coalition government in the history of the Caribbean. In recent times, no other coalition government made it through their first term intact. Not A&R Robinson coalition in Trinidad before the end of the first term, Pandelef. Not Kamla Prasad Bisesar before the end of a first term. Two of the parties were basically wavering. Not Tillman Thomas in his coalition of forces in Grenada. Before the end of the first term, he was faced with some 3 motions of no confidence. He was able to overcome at least 2, and on the third one, he was forced into a premature election. St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Martin. Well, don't talk about St. Martin and them people. Every year is an election, maybe every 6 months. We have shown the Caribbean how coalition government can work successfully. We have shown the benefit of a consultative process in democracy. And that is why sometimes when our critics say, well, the government moving slow and is slow on that, it is part of the reality of the coalition structure and part of the reality that we have to consult and have consensus on any matter with fundamental importance. It's all. We have no one-man show in the Team Unity administration. And that is a consequence of that. So yes, we have defied the odds with regarding the success. Look at it now. Think on it. We couldn't last for 6 weeks. We couldn't last for 6 months. We were to fall prematurely. Now we are standing, going into our second term. And they begin. They can't wait no more. The expectations that we couldn't work as a team have been crushed and crushed. Thanks to the members of the Team Unity administration. Thanks. The disinformation campaign about this unity in Team Unity has not been lived in our cabinet. You may have Wewe on the street. You may have persons maybe close to some member. But in our cabinet, which has been meeting regularly, sometimes 3 times per week, on matters of fundamental importance, we always operate as a team and with respect in the parliament. I'm not concerned with hearsay and rumors, because there will always be those. But I know every Monday, or this week we met Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. That's not a cabinet in discard. A cabinet is in discord. It's like what you had in 2012, when you couldn't convene a parliament, having announced it, because you didn't have the support of your members to be able to pass vital legislation. So I want to go specifically to the Constitution on which we are relying, so that there be no misunderstanding about our constitutional mandate to govern, the supreme law of the land. It says, and let's be clear, Section 47, subsection 2 states that subject to subsection 3, Parliament, unless sooner dissolved, shall continue for 5 years from the date of the first sitting of the National Assembly after any dissolution, and shall then stand dissolved. Again, what is important is not the February elections. What is important is the first sitting of the National Assembly. You begin to count 5 years. And it goes on. Section 48(1) states that a general election of members of the National Assembly shall be held at such time within 90 days after any dissolution of the Parliament as the Governor-General may appoint. the Constitution provides for an administration term to continue 90 days. 90 days. I heard somebody were talking, he giving 36 days. But that not come from the Constitution. I don't know what is that. That probably coming from Rum Barrel. The Constitution provides for an administration's term to continue 90 days after the 5th anniversary of the first sitting of the Parliament. So do the maths. Our first sitting of the Parliament was on May 14, 2015. 14th May 2015. The 5-year anniversary is therefore the 14th day of May 2020. And 90 days thereafter take us up to about the 12th of August 2020. That is where we are living. That is the democracy. This is what the highest law of the land says. So there is no need for any anxiety in the community about when is the election. The election will be called when we are good and ready. That is when it will be called, in the context of the Constitution. Yes? The age is saying, you know, and our Westminster model is a kind of interesting model. Because within the constitutional framework, it did say you can go sooner at the discretion of the Prime Minister, or whenever there is a successful motion of no confidence. They are the only two. Well, we defeated the frivolous motion of no confidence that came in 2018. So there is no motion of no confidence that could force a premature calling of the elections. And I am so very comfortable. I'm not thinking elections just now. I'm thinking about serving the people. I'm thinking about serving the people. I'm thinking about doing more for the poor, for the elderly. I am thinking about upgrading the services of our health hospital, our hospital. I am thinking about more scholarships for our young people to go abroad and study. I am thinking about delivering music studio and cultural developments for our young people. I am thinking about ensuring that we establish a framework in which the cannabis industry can be developed in St. Kitts and Nevis, and no foreign man will come into our country, disrespect our farmers, disrespect our laws, hoots their dog and the workers up at Kayandret. It will never happen as we build out the cannabis industry. Those are the things about which I am agitated. Because I am sure, based on performance, whether we call it for the 12th of August or earlier, the Team Unity Administration will be returned. Will be returned. That is what we are dealing with, Mr. Speaker. And I say to the people finally then, to consolidate the gains of a functioning democracy, our people must ensure that we are returned. Not the same way. The polls are in fact indicating that we will be returned with an enhanced majority. And I don't want to say all 11. I am saying return us as handsomely as we deserve and ensure we have a sufficient number to bring about fundamental reforms to constitutional amendment in the Constitution. So I say thank you for not getting carried away. I want to thank the people because some politicians do not understand that the circumstances that created lawlessness in 1993 no longer prevail in the land. Nobody is going to walk down Stewart Street anymore, mashing up people's glasses, shutting down businesses, creating mayhem in our country. That day has long passed because we are an enlightened people and we have to respect law and order and peace in the country. No wonder the peace initiative have them upset. because they want an environment in which lawlessness can be excited and incited. But thank God, our people are well informed. And I thought, Mr. Speaker, that this morning, as we are celebrating our success, I wanted to highlight significantly is the success of our practicing and functioning democracy that is alive and well and on which this government is operating. May it please you, thank God for the Team Unity administration. Thank God for our people. May God forever bless the people of St. Kitts and Nevis and our beautiful country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, the Honourable Prime Minister, for those statements. I recognize the Honourable Ian Patches-Liburd, member for St. Christopher 1, with a statement under the item Statements by Ministers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I note that the distinguished member from St. Christopher 7 is in a celebratory mood. And I want to share that mood with him, Mr. Speaker. In the process, I first want to thank Almighty God, Mr. Speaker, for continuing to bless me with this glorious opportunity to serve in this and or with this progressive government. This progressive government that everybody likes, because the good book says unity is strength. I also want to thank the people of St. Christopher 1, East Basseterre, and I always like to recognize a former elected representative of East Basseterre, who I still admire, who is in the gallery here, Ambassador Michael Oliver Porrell. Gave East Basseterre so many things, too numerous to mention at this time, Mr. Speaker. But whilst we remain in this celebratory mood, Mr. Speaker, it is important to state that the Ministry of Public Infrastructure, Posts, Urban Development and Transport is mandated to construct, maintain, and manage the road networks in this country, and we provide other services as well to other ministries and departments in design, construction, and project implementation. I therefore, on behalf of the ministry, Mr. Speaker, wish to report on the continuing use and management of the public resources that have been allocated to my ministry, along with the resources that have been budgeted and approved by the boards of the important institutions that fall under the scope of my legislative authority. This, I submit, Mr. Speaker, is my simple way of demonstrating my own view that good governance plays a pivotal role in the development of every country, and our beloved Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, Mr. Speaker, is no exception. For that reason, Mr. Speaker, as an administration, we have always recognized that good governance is not a luxury, but a basic requirement for development. So we can assure all and sundry, Mr. Speaker, that we will continue to promote and embrace the principles of good governance, as indeed we have also recognized that good governance has an economic payoff. You just heard from our distinguished Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the distinguished member from number 7 and Prime Minister also spoke about some imaginary bell. So let's imagine the bell will be rung tomorrow. I take this opportunity to report, because the Prime Minister has not indicated when he will ring the bell. But it could be any time, so we are prepared. Are you over there? Mr. Speaker, upon reflection, though, I am sure that we will agree that our federation is certainly heading in the right direction. And we do anticipate, Mr. Speaker, 5 more years of economic growth in St. Kitts and Nevis. Mr. Speaker, building out our critical infrastructure, in particular, the rehabilitation of our Island Main Road and the building of a second cruise pier are 2 of the largest projects ever undertaken by any government in this country. And I have no doubt, Mr. Speaker, that they have both contributed significantly to the outstanding performance within the construction sector and the wider economy. Let's just look at the Island Main Road, Mr. Speaker. Its rehabilitation continues to progress smoothly. Recall, Mr. Speaker, that Phase 1 is already completed and spanned 5 kilometers west from Camps roundabout to Challengers, and another 5 kilometers east from the airport roundabout in Connery to Keys. Elements of both phases, Mr. Speaker, embodied the philosophy of this administration to use small contractors in the execution of those works. In the process, we tendered for 9 components or elements in Phase 1. And one of the criteria was to shortlist, where possible, contractors from the particular communities who were utilized to construct drains and sidewalks in those areas. Mr. Speaker, under the former administration, sidewalks, beg your pardon, were non-existent in some areas. So we decided to cater for the pedestrians, and in so doing, improve the safety on our roads. The Douglas Party, Mr. Speaker, which ruled this country for 20 years, never catered for the people in these communities. Whereas a significant portion of the population, they walk. They walk, Mr. Speaker. So it was okay under the administration, the Douglas Party, for people to walk in the road and be exposed to traffic. They had no concern or showed no concern for people like Marge and my other sister Joan, who walked in the villages. A car come in bush, they have to step aside. They showed no respect for people, Mr. Speaker. I am advised, Mr. Speaker, that Phase 2 of the Island Main Road project is well advanced, and we have repeated the activities with the small contractors. And to date, some 16 contractors have been engaged, and some to an amount of some $25 million going into the pockets of small contractors. And that, no doubt, will have a cascading effect in the economy, in the villages, wherever they come from, Mr. Speaker. To date, I'm also advised that an additional 14.5 kilometers have already been paved, and this phase is well advanced. The contractors, Mr. Speaker, are fast approaching the western side of Old Road and will soon be linking back to phase 1, or the first phase. And in the meanwhile, Mr. Speaker, over 200 workers have been employed, local workers, local employees, Mr. Speaker. Over 30 trucks have been utilized. Even trucks came over from Nevis, Mr. Speaker. So a lot of trucks, according to the member from number 9 and Premier. So they have all benefited. The entire country has benefited, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as you come around, the Old Road Bay rehabilitation is also significant. Mr. Speaker, for 20 years, the Douglas Party ignored the dangers that motorists and commuters who had or have to use Old Road Bay on a daily basis. They ignored the dangers they were exposed to, Mr. Speaker. The physical layout of the Old Road Bay had two problems. On the one hand, there's always significant land slippage on the mountainside. And on the other hand, or the other side, or the seaside, when we experience hurricanes, the road surface would be considerably eroded by the sea surges. On more than one occasion, Mr. Speaker, the road was blocked and or completely damaged. Cars, Mr. Speaker, buses ran over into the sea at Old Road Bay, and people died. Yet the Douglas Party for 20 years did nothing, absolutely nothing, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is always, a touching for me, because a young man from my constituency, young Molly, died one Sunday afternoon when a rock fell down from the hill onto the car he was driving in, and he died, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, but that meant nothing to the Douglas Party. And even more so, Mr. Speaker, the former representative of East Barsetshire, Asim Martin, was the minister responsible for public works for over 10 years. And one of his constituents died, and he never saw it fit to do something with the road. And I said, Mr. Speaker, and I committed to address it once elected, and in less than 5 years, as my colleague would say, promise made, promise delivered, Mr. Speaker. We have mitigated the risks of further damage and loss of life by reclaiming land that we had lost, thus raising the road to combat sea level rises and moving seaward to reduce further risks from soil slippage and rockfall across Old Road Bay. Mr. Speaker, I'm advised that this project as well is advanced, or well advanced. And I can assure you, and others in the country will assure you, those who traverse across Old Road Bay, they will say, Old Road Bay will never be the same again because of this Team Unity government. Mr. Speaker, this project too was tendered in accordance to the procurement legislation, and the local contractor Rock and Dirt was selected. And we understand he's doing a fantastic job, Mr. Speaker. Local skills in St. Kitts and Nevis. But it would be remiss of me, though, Mr. Speaker, if I did not thank in particular all of my cabinet colleagues. Yes, every single member of this Team Unity cabinet who supported this project, everyone did. Because we all care about people, and we put people first, Mr. Speaker. Thanks as well to the Republic of China and Taiwan, who have grant-funded this project. But, Mr. Speaker, while on roads as well, there are what we call secondary roads. Because if you do a close examination, there are over 107 miles stretch of roads in St. Kitts, Mr. Speaker. And, Mr. Speaker, when we got into office, we found that in over 70 areas, no roads, dirt roads, Mr. Speaker. And you know what happens, especially in these rainy times, Mr. Speaker? They wash over in your area, Madam Clerk. But we are addressing them. We are addressing them, Mr. Speaker. Because we have just published a tender in the local news and in the media for design and construction of concrete roads at Harry Phipps Housing Development in Harpatry. And my colleague from number 4, I'm sure, is happy. But not so happy is my colleague from number 5, because he has requested as well, and we will address them, roads at Crab Hill Heights and Farms Housing, and 2 small roads at Roland Hill and Upper Romney Ground. Member from number 5. I seek your support when I bring that to the relevant meeting. Number 8. Member from number 8, we are still awaiting your list for roads in number 8. We are still awaiting. I can assure you that the member from number 7 is doing his roads. And all of us are getting roads. In number 3, we did roads in Garvis. We did roads in McTinley. Imagine somebody who is not even in the cabinet building roads. Roads in number 3 in Garvis. I understand a road up in Duas past a big house. But we don't discriminate. The house finished? The house, I haven't been up there. It's finished? Congress House finished? We get a good road. Under Team Unity, you get a good road. You must say thanks to God be the glory, Congress. Sorry, I remember from number 3. Number 3, sorry about that, sir.
Seeing his best days.
Seeing your best days under Team Unity. And you know, as you said best days, I saw a lady from number 6. Pastor Bailey, you get your road too. As long as the Minister of Finance approves that amount. I saw a lady from Parsons yesterday, and she was an ex-police officer. I won't call her name. I took a picture. I promised to give you, Mr. Prime Minister. She's in this orange hat, orange hard hat, working on the project over there in Wellington Road. And yes, the same lady, so the member from number 6, saw her bill, her electricity bill, and he wanted to cry. And I didn't recognize Joyce. Trust me, I didn't recognize her. Because she got so fat. I said, Joyce, you're fat on the Team Unity. And we had fun. Tell you, we had fun. We love each other. Yes.
She's not fat, she's healthy.
She's healthy, sorry. I withdraw that. She's healthy on the Team Unity. Joyce, we are friends, don't worry. I promised not to put the picture on Facebook. I did promise that to you yesterday. But, Mr. Speaker, water, as we move on. You know, in this era of climate variability and resultant rainfall deficit, Mr. Speaker, we're having challenges. In spite of those challenges, Mr. Speaker, we have moved to provide water, especially in the St. Peter's area. And in the next few days, Mr. Speaker, my ministry will commission Shadwell 2 well and provide in excess of 400,000 gallons of water, Mr. Speaker. And we trust and hope that that will eliminate any problems of shortages in that area. But we cannot overlook the fact that the prognosis for the weather climate this year is not looking good. So we have also decided to use the water. You know, over 2/3 of the Earth's surface is covered with water, Mr. Speaker. But we have been very slow to recognize that and very slow to use that source. But we are moving towards reverse osmosis or desalination, Mr. Speaker. And again, in number 8, we'll be the first beneficiary with a desalination plant over in Keys in Canada.
And Nevis too, don't forget that.
And in Nevis, yes, right. Should I say where it's coming from?
You can say whatever you wish.
Yes, in Nevis as well. In Nevis, through the UAE,
Yes.
Mr. Speaker.
Diplomacy at work.
Diplomacy at work, and the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs is expanding, to use his words, the footprint of St. Kitts and Nevis. Mr. Speaker, on the energy, we have signed a power purchase agreement with La Clanche. We mean in Skellig, Mr. Speaker. And I crave the indulgence of my colleague, Attorney General, to try to help us to expedite the finalization of that agreement. It has moved on slow track, but we are going to provide some 16 megawatts of base load energy to Skellig. We are going green, Mr. Speaker. Our traffic signals, Mr. Speaker, 16 megawatts of base load energy. At peak, we have 28. We require 28 megawatts, so over 50% of that, Mr. Speaker. That. Oh, I'm sorry, sir. You're right on the ball, Mr. Speaker. Forgive me. Solar energy, sir. You know, we are blessed with sunshine, we are blessed with wind, and we are blessed with 2 volcanoes. But we are taking this step while Nevis, on the other hand, has gone the direction of geothermal, and we expect that they will deliver shortly, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there are some concerns about the traffic congestion in Basse City in particular. And I wish to report that we have already done our traffic count and our traffic study, which has informed our decision to move to phase 2 of the installation, beg your pardon, of these traffic signals, Mr. Speaker. While on transport, Mr. Speaker, I also wish to report that the East Bus Line Terminal Phase 2, that project has also been tendered just a few days ago, for the construction of commercial spaces at East Bus Line Terminal. Whereas at the West Bus Line Terminal, Mr. Speaker, there has been some delay, which will be short-lived, I'm advised. And I want to also make the point, I want to make it, as someone just said, pellucidly clear, Mr. Speaker, that some of the things you are hearing are so far from the truth. This team unity government of which I'm a part care about people. We love people. So why on earth we will build a brand new West Bus Line terminal for people, for the thousands of people who commute daily, in particular from via Old Road to Basseterre, to put them in the sunshine, hot sun, and put them in the rain. Does that make sense, Mr. Speaker? It makes no sense. So I want to state here and now that when that bus line, West Bus Line terminal is completed, it will be fully covered with a canopy on top, with sides to protect you from the rainfall, the building of the weather. Just like at the RLB International Airport, like with the canopy, you will be able to drive onto or into the bus terminal and disembark or embark a bus without any rain, without being wet, Mr. Speaker. That's what we will do. Mr. Speaker, I want to also dispel the notion that we have not considered or have made provisions for the physically challenged. That too, Mr. Speaker, is so far from the truth. Because when that terminal is finished, in the next few weeks, I'm advised, the idea or the concept is to raise the road level. The road will be going into the terminal, will be resurfaced and raised to the level of the platform so that wheelchair access would be easily accessible, Mr. Speaker. And there also will be benches. We are a forward-looking team unity government. We built one of the best bus line terminals in the Caribbean at East Bus Line. So why will we short-change the West? The only impediment for the West Bus Line terminal is space. If we had space, it would have been bigger and perhaps even better. But that is only a phase of it, Mr. Speaker. And we intend, as well, Mr. Speaker, upon the advice of NEMA, the National Emergency Management Agency, of which the AG has some responsibility, all responsibility. And we are considering as well the St. Peter's bus line service. There's a view or a recommendation. We have looked at some land within the area. So we'll take those buses from off College Street, and even in event that there's floods or rain, they won't be exposed to the hazards of such occurrences, Mr. Speaker. That is what your team unity government is doing. Mr. Speaker, I also want to report a matter that is maritime in nature. And I want to inform the nation that the Department of Maritime Affairs is conducting investigations into 2 serious boated accidents. We prayed for the Premier last night when he was going home. He's back today, so he's safe. The Department of Maritime Affairs, Mr. Speaker, is working in collaboration with the St. Kitts Nevis Coast Guard and the Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force to establish the cause of these accidents. But in the meanwhile, Mr. Speaker, I must implore those boat captains those fisher folk who go into with their pirogues, especially early morning or late at night. You have to conform to the marine requirements in relation to safety, Mr. Speaker. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I want to address the issue of our new cruise spear. Another commitment made, another commitment delivered. Mr. Speaker, the new cruise spear, as I reported before in this Parliament, is a design and build contract. The contractor agreed to an 18-month construction period, but experienced some challenges. Mr. Speaker, as a qualified engineer yourself, I am sure you will agree that every project, irrespective of its size and or its value, comes with its own peculiar challenges. In this case, Mr. Speaker, there were major dredging and piling issues, along with the delay that was caused through the passage of a hurricane. The contractor, I am advised, has indicated that the pier is complete. Mr. Speaker, I heard myself an irresponsible statement by the member opposite from number 3, claiming that the pier will be overrun or was overrun to the tune of $60 million. Mr. Speaker, that is a pathological lie. Mr. Speaker, I want to report to this House that the project cost for the new cruise pier at Port Zante is US $43 million, Mr. Speaker. And to date, there have been no overruns on this project and no attempt by SCASPA to increase the cost of the project. Mr. Speaker, there have been claims, I am advised, and contractors always make claims, especially big contractors. Because this is part of the contracting world, whether here in St. Kitts and Nevis, whether in Trinidad and Tobago, or whether, for that matter, in the United States of America. There are claims, I understand, Mr. Speaker, for unforeseeable circumstances with respect to the dredging and unforeseeable physical conditions with respect to the piles, also for loss of time with respect to the hurricanes. I want to state categorically, Mr. Speaker, that none of those claims were approved by the consultant engineer engaged by SCASPA. I want to also state, Mr. Speaker, that SCASPA has paid out to date, I'm advised, $41 million US and still holds a 5% retention, which is standard in the industry. Mr. Speaker, I wish to inform the nation that SCASPA has not paid the full complement of the contract sum, and up to the point, beg your pardon, that the contractor was ready to hand over, there was no cost overrun. The contractor, Mr. Speaker, has not submitted any claim, any invoice for a cost overrun. There is, however, Mr. Speaker, an arrangement to use the pier when it is required to mitigate losses as allowed by the contract. The contract stipulates that, Mr. Speaker, except that both parties must agree. And I report here today, both parties have agreed to that, Mr. Speaker, to wit, SCASPA and the contractor, CCC. Meanwhile, Mr. Speaker, the last report I submitted to this Parliament, I made mention of a spectacular cruise ship parade which took place at Port Zante in Basseterre on Monday, the 16th of December, 2019. As I mentioned back then, Mr. Speaker, that it was a red letter day in St. Kitts and Nevis, as 4 ships for the first time docked at Port Zante simultaneously at the same time. Mr. Speaker, this, I believe, is testimony that the facility is ready to be utilized, ready to be used, and it is being used. I reported back then, Mr. Speaker, that in just 1 week, over 35,000 cruise passengers were accommodated by SCASPA at Port Zante. But listen to this, Mr. Speaker. Since that last report I made on the 27th of December last year in this Parliament and to the nation, there have been 89 cruise ship calls here in St. Kitts, which brought a total of 162,018 passengers, Mr. Speaker, and 66,264 crew members, giving a total combined of 228,282 visitors that were facilitated at both piers combined. Both piers situated at the Port Zante, a dedicated cruise ship facility. So member from number 9, the pier is right. 228,000 and more visitors eating the pier, the right pier, Mr. Speaker. Sweet right pier, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in closing, I submit, Mr. Speaker, that our team unity government, your team unity government, is reversing or dismantling the 20 years of neglect of the Douglas Labour Party in the area of public infrastructure. Our public buildings and our critical infrastructure were ignored. Mr. Speaker, I submit a positive view as a division born in St. Kitts, Mr. Speaker. I am so happy to be part of this new, unhealthy, and for that matter, the best ever relationship between St. Kitts and Nevis, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, this team unity government is heading in the right direction. There's a settled view in the country, in the Federation, Mr. Speaker, that one good term deserves another. And I want to just implore those of us in St. Kitts and Nevis, and in particular those in the constituency in which I was born, in the constituency in which I was raised, and in the constituency in which I still live. When I was growing up, it was referred as Fish Bay. We now know it as East Basseterre. I refer to it as Uptown. Uptown, member from number 5. I want to implore my people, my fellow constituents in particular, and the entire nation, that whatever your mind conceive, that you will achieve. One condition, you just have to believe, Mr. Speaker. So let us keep moving on. Let us keep moving on with your Team Unity administration. I forewarn you, a vote for the Douglas Party is a vote to go back to the treacherous past he left us, Mr. Speaker. And we have come too far to turn back now. We have come this far by faith, Mr. Speaker. And God is the one who sets up. And he's the absolute judge, and only him can put this Team Unity government down. May it please you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member for number 1 in Patches Library. I recognize the Honourable Eugene Hamilton, member for St. Christopher 8, with a statement.
Mr. Speaker, I rise on the occasion of the 5th anniversary of the Team Unity administration and the meeting held during that period of our celebration to make a statement under the item statement by ministers. And Mr. Speaker, I want to focus on 2 areas. I want to focus on agriculture, which is one of the ministries which I lead, and on housing, which is under the Ministry of Human Settlement. Before doing so, though, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Honourable Prime Minister for his thorough presentation of the achievements and deliverables of the Team Unity administration in 5 years. And I also want to congratulate my colleague Minister and member for number 1 for his presentation this morning, but I want to add something to his presentation to indicate and to say thank you for the road at Half Moon Bay. Yes, Half Moon, leading up to the
Koi Hotel.
The Koi, yeah. So I just want to make sure that you know, and to reflect that. And I want to also assure you that the day will not end before I give you those other 2 or 3 in my constituency. Mr. Speaker, I want to try to be very brief because, you know, on this occasion you can speak for so long on so many issues. There are so many deliverables that really, if you have to speak on these deliverables, it will take you the entire day. But I want to just briefly list a few. On agriculture, for example, Mr. Speaker, we promised much and we delivered much. We know that the government before us had a high IMF debt, and the economy was held back and our farmers weren't supported. That is the reality we met when we came to office. And since the election, Mr. Speaker, we have set about in agriculture to assist farmers in many ways. We have provided hurricane relief, for example, Mr. Speaker, in excess of $1.3 million to over 500 farmers. That happened, Mr. Speaker, after the 2017 hurricanes that caused significant loss and damage to some of our farmers in St. Kitts and Nevis. We went further, Mr. Speaker, when we provided $1.5 million in loans at low interest rate, 5% interest rate, to assist farmers in conducting their business. And even further, Mr. Speaker, we went when we provided $1 million in grant funds, $1 million through the Development Bank. $1 million in grant funds, Mr. Speaker, went on to help over 230 persons. 230 persons benefited from that particular program. So the farmers in this country have had significant contributions and were the beneficiaries of the government's program to help to rehabilitate those who had lost from the hurricanes, as well as to help those to grow and to develop their business. We have, Mr. Speaker, introduced a new farmers registration system where we cancelled the outstanding debts of those who were in arrears and had a new registration system and reduced the fees to be registered as farmers, because we wanted persons to recognize and understand, Mr. Speaker, that their contribution to overall economic development as farmers is significant. We have, Mr. Speaker, introduced the pesticide, and what we have been able to do, Mr. Speaker, with pesticide is that we had a system where chemicals were introduced on the farms and too much chemicals were introduced in producing our food. We were able to reduce, Mr. Speaker, from a high of 3.65 kilograms per hectare to down to 0.31 kilograms per hectare. What that does, Mr. Speaker, is ensure that we produce the best quality food that our stomachs should be able to consume, so that we reduce the incidence of illnesses. We know, Mr. Speaker, that most of the things that happen to us start through our guts. And if we put in our bellies and our guts the kind of contaminated foods, then the result will be impacting our health as we continue to live, and maybe even shorten our lives. So I appreciate the fact, Mr. Speaker, that in this 5-year period, we were able to reduce the kilograms of pesticides from 3.65 kilograms per hectare down to 0.031. Not my words, Mr. Speaker. It is what the FAO has done through its observation reported in their annual reports. Without reducing production, yes. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I should add, there's one farm in particular in St. Kitts that uses no chemicals at all. The Gideon Farms. You go to the Gideon Farms, and I encourage anybody in St. Kitts to go to the Gideon Farm. You go to the Gideon Farm and you see their operation. No pesticides at all. Strictly organic production of food on that particular farm. Mr. Speaker, in agriculture, the Economic and Social Development Program and Grant Assistance agreed in August 2019. We supported that program with $2 million US. We have also, Mr. Speaker, launched a real-time weather data collection platform. Why did we do that? We wanted to be able to predict the forecast what rainfall will come to St. Kitts and Nevis and in certain areas to help to mitigate against adverse conditions. We did that to be able to advise the farmers where to plant, when to plant, what crops to plant in certain areas. We, Mr. Speaker, did a classification of our soils so that in St. Kitts we informed on which crops is best suited for which areas in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. And Mr. Speaker, last week I met with the farmers, those who produce animals and meat, and we agreed, Mr. Speaker, we were to launch the Betical Eradication Program, free program, all Betical and antibiotics free for the first 6 months, and looking at continuing for 6 months, another 6 months if necessary. It was to start on Monday, Mr. Speaker, but I have to report that because we had a vehicle delivered late, it certainly will start on Monday coming. All farmers throughout the country will benefit from the program of the government starting on Monday. We have made progress, Mr. Speaker, much progress, and we have a lot more to do. It is not the time, Mr. Speaker, I will say it is not the time to turn back the hands of time to go back to the labor, high IMF debt, and the economic mismanagement. We, Mr. Speaker, we must return not to the past, because the IMF debt left farmers in a lot of disarray, left farmers behind. Mr. Speaker, I said I will not take long. I want to turn to housing under the Ministry of Human Settlement. on this 5th anniversary, it is important to report that we promised bigger and better housing, and we delivered bigger and better housing. Under the previous administration, 1,200 acres of land was poofed away, and the disastrous decision of the government meant that we were going to lose 1,200 acres forever. And our homes during that period were smaller, some of them not even outfitted with bathrooms and toilets and cupboards. And so, since the election, Mr. Speaker, we have delivered. We have delivered. We have delivered over 3,000 housing solutions. The Prime Minister mentioned it in his presentation. The homes which we are building today are almost 100 square foot bigger than those which were produced under the previous administration. They have more spacious bedrooms. You know, I went in some of them before, Mr. Speaker. Only a bed could hold in there, not even a big bed, a small one. But today, you could put a king-size bed in those rooms and still find room for the dressing table and other things. That is the Team Unity housing program, Mr. Speaker. More spacious bedrooms, more spacious bathrooms, and high-quality finishes. Man, when I went in some of these houses, and I see the cupboards in the kitchen, man, it's like in a king's palace. Seriously speaking, Mr. Speaker, have you been in any of them? I want to invite you, Mr. Speaker, to come to some of these houses with me, because the quality of the finishes in these houses is first class. I'm a little jealous myself. I have to see if I could upgrade my own house, because it's not in the same class. Mr. Speaker, truth be told, these houses are quality houses, fit for kings and queens. Mr. Speaker, what is even more is that we introduce a program approved by the Cabinet where 2% interest is what you charge at NHC for those people who are getting those houses. Nowhere in the world that is happening, Mr. Speaker. And that is what we say when we say the government has delivered. Yes. The government has delivered on the promises made to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. Of course, Mr. Speaker, we introduced a program under the Hurricane Relief Program, which has supported over thousands. We know that it is many thousands. Thousands of persons with repair and renovation of their homes. I am old enough, Mr. Speaker, to recall living to 3 or 4 governments. A Labour government, then a PAM NRP government, and another Labour government. And this is only 5 years of a Team Unity government. And it is the first time in my lifetime that I have seen a government set about to restore the roofing material, the roofs of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis that have been damaged by hurricanes. The first time. This is not any tarpaulin. This is no tarpaulin, Mr. Speaker. This is solid roofing materials across the country. That is a deliverable. That it ain't even PAM or PLP people getting it. It is everybody getting it, Mr. Speaker. Everybody. No matter who you are. That is what we say that the Team Unity government has come to deliver to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. And I want to encourage those people in my constituency in particular. Some of you might be waiting. You're close at hand. Be happy for those who have already got this done. And get ready because your time is near. That is what the Team Unity government has done for the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. We have, Mr. Speaker, redeemed 400 acres of land that was put away under the previous administration. In Cayon, we have redeemed land so that people could own land in the future. In Lodge, we have redeemed land so that people could own land in the future. In Sandy Point, we have redeemed land so that people could have land. And in Conyers, Mr. Speaker, this government recognizes that the land was put away and is beyond the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. And we say it got to come back. And we have set about to redeem that land. And so far, 400 acres has been redeemed. Thanks, Mr. Speaker, to this Team Unity administration. Already, Mr. Speaker, over 500 persons have benefited from the first-time homeowners program Over the past 5 years, we have assisted more than 500 persons. So the Development Bank has been a vehicle that has been a champion for the construction of homes for people, ordinary people in this federation, Mr. Speaker. And I'm sure, Mr. Speaker, we call the civil service program. The government put $30 million in that bank to ensure that public servants, some of them who were not getting any loans from the ordinary banks, could go there and get their homes, get money to build their homes. It is in an extraordinary performance by this government, delivering what the people of St. Kitts and Nevis elect us to deliver. There is no reason now for us to turn back the hands of time. This time we must go forward with a second term of the unity government. We have made progress. Yes, much progress. And we know that there's more to do. Yes. And we will not turn back now, because we are the ones who have shown that we can deliver to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, and we'll do that in our next term again. It is not time to turn back to that high IMF debt, a debt which strangled our country, which made civil servants couldn't get the increments.
Yes.
We can't go back there. No. We have to go forward with a team unity administration. A return to the past would mean that the people will not be achieving the dreams that they dream, those hopes and aspirations that they look forward to under team unity administration will be gone if you go back. So now I call on the people of St. Kitts and Nevis and those in my constituency, let's go forward ever with the team unity administration. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes. Backward never.
Thank you, Honourable Member Hamilton.
1 second. Before we move to the next item, okay, let's yes, I think we should do it now. Before we move to the next item, which will be personal explanations, the clerk would have circulated a new order paper.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, but I'm picking up, might be minor.
To be amended? No, she's going to correct it, madam.
With what we discussed this morning?
Yes.
In terms of the item, the criminal...
Yes.
To be done
yes,
first.
Mr. Speaker, it was I think we noted that on the first reading it had the criminal records there for first reading again, but we already had a first reading, so I think she's going to remove that. So we will have a new document with it. It's not an amendment required.
Just to be clear, the item criminal records.
Criminal records rehabilitation of offenders amendment,
yes.
Bill 2019. You will notice that it is on the first reading.
Yes.
As well as on the second reading. But there was already a first reading. So that essentially we're not asking for an amendment. She'll just give you a new document, removing that first reading.
Anyway, I think the solution would be that once we circulate this, we move a motion to adopt it and use it, because it may lead to some confusion as to what we did earlier.
Yeah.
Well,
does that?
Mr. Speaker, a new order paper has been circulated.
Yes.
I'm taking note of the amendments we made earlier this morning. And you will notice, Mr. Speaker, that the amendment we made has been included. And so I urge the Parliament to accept the order paper as amended. And just to be clear, Mr. Speaker, the amendment which we agreed upon this morning was the introduction of the criminal offenders, criminal records rehabilitation of offenders amendment bill. That was not the one, is it?
To remove from first reading.
Yes.
And to add miscellaneous.
Where's my order paper?
This
Yes.
order paper. The question is that the order paper as circulated now at this time be adopted. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it.
explanations. Motions relating to the business of the National Assembly and moved by a minister. Introduction of bills and first reading.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise on this occasion to present and to seek leave to introduce and have read for the first time the bill Liquor License Amendment Bill 2020.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to second the motion.
The question is that the bill entitled Liquor License Amendment Bill 2020 be read the first time. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill to amend the Liquor Licenses Act, Cap 18.21, otherwise known as the Liquor Licenses Amendment Bill 2020.
The bill has been read a first time. Honourable Member, before you rise, another observation. I suspect you're going to introduce the Cannabis Bill 2020. To the best of my knowledge, we did have a Cannabis Bill 2019 introduced last year, and I propose that that one be withdrawn before we move to this.
Mr. Speaker, I'm going to withdraw the bill that was first
Read in 2019. The Cannabis Bill first read in
Yes.
2019 be withdrawn.
Yes, and just to be clear, absolutely clear, the Cannabis Bill Cannabis Bill 2019 had its first reading in May 2019, and in accordance with our rules, the standing orders, rule section 28(1), a bill can be withdrawn at any time. So I'm giving that guidance that that is what we are doing at this point. So on that, thank you, Honourable Member. So the question is that the Cannabis Bill 2019, which had a first reading in May of last year, be withdrawn. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to seek leave to introduce and to have read for the first time the Cannabis Bill 2020.
Mr. Speaker, I do rise to second the motion.
Question is that the Cannabis Bill 2020 be read if first time. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill to provide for the establishment of the Medicinal Cannabis Authority to regulate, monitor, and control the cultivation, supply, possession, production, and use of medicinal cannabis and for related matters, otherwise known as the Cannabis Bill 2020.
Cannabis Bill 2020 has been read a first time.
Mr. Speaker, I rise on this occasion to introduce and to have read for the first time the Counter-Financing Proliferation of Weapons of Mass Destruction Bill 2020.
Yeah, I realize I missed one, but go ahead. We'll come back to it. Mr. Speaker, I rise to second the motion. I know, Mr. Speaker.
Counter-Financing Proliferation of Weapons of Mass Destruction Bill 2020.
Honourable members, why aren't we dealing with the drugs prevention bill as listed?
Well, we can have, Mr. Speaker, the Drugs Prevention and Abatement of the Misuse and Abuse of Drugs Amendment Bill 2020 be read for the first time
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
The question is that the Drugs Prevention and Abatement of the Misuse and Abuse of Drugs Amendment Bill 2020 be read a first time. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill to amend the Drugs Prevention and Abatement of the Misuse and Abuse of Drugs Act, Cap 9.08, otherwise known as the Drugs Prevention and Abatement of the Misuse and Abuse of Drugs Amendment Bill 2020.
The bill has been read a first time.
Finally, Mr. Speaker, I rise on this occasion to have introduced and read for the first time the Counter-Financing Proliferation of Weapons of Mass Destruction Bill 2020.
Mr. Speaker, I rise and second the motion.
The question is that the Counter-Financing Proliferation of Weapons of Mass Destruction Bill 2020 be read a first time. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill to prevent, disrupt, and criminalize the financing of the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, otherwise known as the Counter-Financing Proliferation of Weapons of Mass Destruction Bill 2020.
The bill has been read a first time.
Mr. Speaker, I rise with your leave to have read for first time the bill shortly entitled, Miscellaneous Amendments, Financial Action Task Force Bill 2020.
Mr. Speaker, I rise and second the motion.
The question is that the bill entitled the Miscellaneous Amendment Financial Action Task Force Bill 2020 be read a first time. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill to provide for various amendments to facilitate the comprehensive implementation of measures to boost national security, strengthen investigative techniques, and to foster greater coherence with the financial services sector in keeping with the requirements of the Financial Action Task Force and for related matters, otherwise known as the Miscellaneous Amendment Financial Action Task Force Bill 2020.
The bill has been read a first time.
Public Business Bills, second reading.
Recognize the Honourable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise on this occasion to move the Liquor License Amendment Bill 2020. Mr. Speaker, this is a short amendment being made to an ancient act, an act number 18.21 that became law sometime in 1906. And it actually has been in force since 1907. So we are dealing with a bit of legislation that is about 113 years old. And our efforts today is to bring this piece of legislation into modernity. So it's a short bill, non-offensive, non-controversial, and we will not tarry long in its debate. The bill says that its object is to amend the Liquor Licenses Act, Cap 18.21, and the material part of this amendment to the bill is an amendment of Section 4 of the Parent Act by adding a new subsection 3 as follows. Notwithstanding subsection 1, the minister may, by order published in the Gazette, appoint a day or days for the holding of an additional special sitting of the magistrate court for the purposes of subsection 1. Mr. Speaker, what we are attempted to do here is to ensure the responsiveness of our system to the evolution of time. Traditionally, on the 31st of December, 31st of December, Mr. Speaker, persons would be required to go to the court to have the renewal of their license. In reality, Mr. Speaker, the Act then and now speaks to the 2nd of January. We are advised by the Inland Revenue that the 31st of December became the operational date for practical purposes because the 2nd of January is a public holiday. With the large number of entities involved in transacting liquor, the 31st of December being a very busy day, and indeed on many occasions it has become a half day, half holiday, as part of the carnival celebrations, it has proven to be an inconvenient period of time. And so this amendment speaks to giving the power to the minister by order published in the Gazette to appoint a day or days for the holding of an additional special sitting of the Magistrates' Court for the purposes of assisting persons who required access to the court system in order to get a liquor license. So it is basically a straightforward piece of legislation intended to introduce some flexibility into the existing law to allow for additional sittings of the Magistrates' Court to promote the ease of doing business. In other words, rather than allow entities that would have been unable to secure their license on the 31st of December to run afoul of the law, we have created this flexibility where not just one day, but some number of days could be assigned for this purpose. In a nutshell, Mr. Speaker, the current bill is really attempting to revamp the Liquor License Act and to make it more contemporaneous in its application. I want to wish, Mr. Speaker, this bill safe passage. We expect over time that we shall come to make further amendments to this particular piece of legislation. May it please you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, with your leave, I rise to lend my support to the Honourable Mover of the Liquor License Amendment Bill, currently before this Honourable House. In that regard, Mr. Speaker, I wish to speak to the importance of laws as a means of bringing a proper structure to a right-thinking society. Mr. Speaker, the rule of law brings a level of orderly functioning and seeks to bring a level of fairness, of known operational measures, of structured norms within a society that should be universally acceptable and applicable. In the absence of rules, in the absence of a rule of law, Mr. Speaker, the consequence would be a chaotic system of anything goes, where each person would do as he or she pleases. Our laws or rules or regulations, our various standards and codes of conduct, therefore, function as a sort of guardrail for society for us to operate within. And as societies advance and we change and we evolve, it is inevitable that likewise our legal system, our parliamentary system, must also retain a level of flexibility in order to accommodate some of those changes. And Mr. Speaker, this is part of the advancement of the rule of law, which at times must be adjusted in order to remain relevant and effective. The Honourable Mover showed where what may seem to be a very simple change to our laws, however, is very critical to how that system of how people do things operate. And this amendment has come about because late last year, as the law was then, it provided for those in our society who run establishments to sell liquor, each year had to appear before the summary court, the magistrate, to renew their licenses to sell liquor. And as the economy has expanded and more people have been granted licenses to sell liquor, it becomes a sort of traffic jam on that last day of the year to get before the court to get those licenses. And last year, many people were unable to do so because there was a half day, a half holiday, I'm told, and so the court was not able to entertain them. And many people are still struggling to maintain, as it was, to get that license. So this year is to adjust the law so that our citizens, our business people can operate within the law rather than have to go outside the law, and they become part of that structure. I would say, Mr. Speaker, is a very simple amendment because what this does allows the minister responsible for finance to be able to set a day or date when the court can now sit to hear these applications for renewal, and so not in any way to disrupt further the orderly processing of applications. I should say very quickly, Mr. Speaker, that the regime for somebody to get a liquor license and somebody to renew a license is quite extensive. Because if one was to look at the Parent Act, one would understand that such a person or entity would normally have to establish that they were a fit and proper person to get a liquor license. As a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, there is quite an extensive application process for a first-time person, but also if you have to renew your license, you have to show that there has been nothing untoward that has happened during the course of the previous year for you to be able to get such a license. It's important to note that to get a liquor license, you have to be able to show to the court that you are somebody of fit character, that you can stand as it was. As a matter of fact, the magistrate, there are grounds for the refusal of an application, and these, I read them from the Parent Act, that the premises are unfit for the purpose of a license applied for, or are, in the opinion of the magistrate, undesirable to be licensed. That an applicant is a person of bad character, that the applicant, having within the preceding 12 months been a holder of a license in any part of the state, has allowed his or her licensed premises to become a nuisance to his or her neighborhood. That the premises for which the application is made are so situate that they cannot be kept under effective police control, that the premises are likely to be a nuisance to the neighborhood, that the applicant has neglected to comply with the provisions of this act in making his or her application, that the applicant was not of age, that had not been old enough to get a liquor license, and so forth, Mr. Speaker. So that the granting of a liquor license is not something to be taken lightly, and there has been traditionally, and as the mover of the amendment of the bill has said, goes back more than 100 years, goes back a significant time, that we have studiously maintained that those who sell liquor in our society should be of good and proper character. What this does, therefore, is that by going to the magistrate's court and applying, we are conforming to that tradition. But the one day is not enough. And that this allows the minister to establish another day to be able to allow people to apply. I would want to say, Mr. Speaker, that those who grant the licenses, and in this case the Inland Revenue, the controller of Inland Revenue, has made recommendations to the cabinet for us to review the system, because it can be onerous that people have to go through this process all the time. And we may well be coming back to have a more efficient process as times have changed, that allows us to do business with more ease, and where other safeguards can be put in place to protect our society, our citizens, and our neighborhoods. But with those few words, Mr. Speaker, I just want to support the move of the bill and to wish this amendment safe passage to this honorable House. May it please you.
Thank you, the Honorable Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to thank the learned Attorney General for adding greater explanation to the object of the bill. It's quite simple and controversial. And so, Mr. Speaker, without further ado, I wish to ask that the bill be read the second time.
The question is that the bill entitled Liquor License Amendment Bill 2020 be read a second time. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it. House goes into committee. Sorry. Sorry. Read it a second time.
A bill to amend the Liquor Licenses Act, Cap 18.21, otherwise known as the Liquor Licenses Amendment Bill 2020.
The bill has been read a second time by our newly appointed Deputy Clerk, Ms. Trevelyan Stapleton. House moves into committee. Yes.
Clauses 1 through 3.
Question is, sorry.
There are no amendments.
Thank you.
The
question is that clauses 1, 2, and 3 stand part of the bill. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it.
The enacting clause.
The question is that the enacting clause stands part of the bill. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it.
The title?
The question is that the title stands part of the bill. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. House resumes.
Mr. Speaker, with your leave, I rise on this occasion to report, firstly, that the Liquor License Amendment Bill 2020 has gone through committee stage without amendment, and to seek leave, Mr. Speaker, for suspension of Standing Order 57 to allow the bill to be read a third time and passed into law.
The question is that Standing Order 57 be suspended to allow the third reading of this bill. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it. Standing Order 57 has been suspended. I'll put the question now. The question is that the bill entitled the Liquor License Amendment Bill 2020 be read a third time and passed. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill to amend the Liquor Licenses Act, Cap 18.21, otherwise known as the Liquor Licenses Amendment Bill 2020.
The bill has been read a third time and passed. Honourable members?
Mr. Speaker,
Yes.
perhaps you're about to say the same thing, but asking that we adjourn for lunch at this point in time and come back to the cannabis.
Thank you. And 1 hour is fine, honourable members? This Honourable House stands adjourned until 2 p.m. today.